Welcome to the second class in this disaster prep series. It is January 15th. We are talking about prepping for a long power outage. This is me, Ann Forrest. There's my email, seattleprepares@gmail, and I am very glad you're here. Real quick about me, I'm a retired Navy nurse. I spent some time homeschooling and then we moved to Seattle. When my kiddo went to high school, I started getting involved in disaster preparedness. I do several things. I teach disaster preparedness classes like this. I volunteer with the Office of Emergency Management, teaching their disaster prep classes. I also teach Stop the Bleed, which is a medical class. And then I'm very involved with the emergency communication hubs. So, no degrees, no certificates or anything like that, but have been doing this since about 2018. So, about six-ish years. So this will be recorded. I will send a cleaned up recording out to the group. I will also send out the slides. And yes, you will have homework. If you have any questions, please put them in chat. If you have anything that's very specific to you, I'm happy to stay on the call and talk about that after class, but please don't ask questions during class that only you really care about. Let's make this a good class for everyone. So a long-term power outage, not uncommon. We just had one back in November, the bomb cyclone, which I didn't even know was a thing. Long-term power outage, let's think about how to prepare for that. We went through this last week. This is a list of the hazards that Seattle put together, ranked by how often they happen and how devastating would they be to our region. We're not going to go back over those. You have that list from last week. I just wanted to highlight all of these probably have some power outage component to it. Many of our hazards would involve a power issue. So we're going to talk about the basics, not the fancy stuff when we have a power outage, but how do we stay alive? So we're going to talk about shelter, we're going to talk about food, water and sewage, lighting, medical devices, and then thinking a little bit about what to do for your home before the power gets turned back on. If there is no power, shelter is an issue. I honestly don't have much on this slide because we are really lucky. We live in an environment that doesn't get super, super hot or super, super cold. Think about gathering with other folks to share their warmth if it's cold weather and we have no power. And then always stay dry. Being wet and cold is really a bad thing. So if it's wet outside, make sure you stay dry. That will definitely help you stay warm. Food, kind of a big one. So let's talk first about a short-term power outage, hours, maybe a day. So those short ones typically associated with a storm. Unfortunately, the last storm we had, folks were without power for much longer. But if you think it's going to be a short period of time, meaning power is going to be off for hours, maybe a day, then this is kind of the order in which we advise you to eat. Keep your refrigerator and your freezer closed. You want to keep all the cold air in those appliances. Eat from your pantry. This is the time to open the can of tuna, crackers, bread, if that's where you keep your bread, anything in your pantry, canned fruits, canned vegetables, heat them up on well, you don't have a stove because the power's out, but eat from your pantry. Keep your refrigerator and your freezer closed. That's for a short-term power outage. Now let's talk about a long-term power outage. Let's say it's something like an earthquake, a big earthquake, or a cyber attack really caught people off guard. And the system, from what you can tell, the system is down hard. Its power is probably not going to come back on right away. So days, maybe weeks, power could be out. So the order in which you eat food is different. You're going to eat from your refrigerator first because that stuff's not going to last very long. Eat it while it's there and it's good. And then you eat from your freezer. Day 3 and day 4, we anticipate neighbors getting together and having barbecues. One person starts up their grill, everybody else brings food around to heat up or to cook. So that's kind of what we anticipate after a large power outage. So refrigerator first and then your freezer. Think about communal meals. And then you go into your pantry. Unfortunately, a lot of our comfort foods are in the pantry, but if you can, try and eat those last because you really need those to last and have a long shelf life. This is just typical stuff. If you're lucky enough to have something like a barbecue grill, great, you're in good shape. Always think about extra propane tanks. This is a camping stove. Fortunately, a lot of us in the Northwest are campers. Folks that are campers are going to be a little bit ahead of the game when it comes to having equipment to survive a power outage. So think about a camping stove. I'm not saying go out and buy one. I'm just saying think about this is what you would use if there was a long-term power outage. And here's some different ways of cooking food. So this is called a bio stove, and there's a million different brands. It's called a bio stove because you burn whatever you can find sticks, leaves, any kind of wood, paper, whatever you got. Pretty much you burn in this thing. So it's called a bio stove. This one, and I think most of the ones I looked up, they fold down into nothingness. They're very, very flat. So if space is an issue and you want to invest in something like this, a bio stove is an option. So all of these different sides of this device, they unhinge and they lay flat. So basically you are sticking some kind of combustible material in here and putting your pot on top. This one I think is called a Kelly kettle. This is only for heating up water. So you put, again, you're burning whatever you can find down here. The fire goes through the center of this, flames come out the top, and this is a cut in half version. So fire's in the middle, the water is all around the sides. So this is heating up water. This is your cup of noodles. This is your instant coffee, hot chocolate, whatever you need hot water for. That's what this device is for. That's cooking. Just think about how you're going to heat up food. From what I've read about disasters, having hot food is really sanity saving. It's surprising how much a hot meal makes you feel like a human being. So it's going to be important. And I only know this, fortunately, not from experience, but from reading about other disasters. So think about how you might heat up food together with your neighbors. Don't everybody do this by yourself. Figure out how to work with neighbors. So let's talk about water. What happens to our water system when we lose power? Again, either from a big earthquake, a big storm, a cyber attack, whatever. Power's out. What happens to our water system? So, luckily, our water system is gravity fed almost completely. There are very few pumps pushing water to us. And the reason is this. So, here's our region. Seattle's over here on the left. We get our water from the Tote River watershed and the Cedar River watershed. So, way out here to the east, up in the mountains, it's very, very high. So, going up and over Seattle and down and back up to Seattle, both directions, the water lines are fed by gravity. Thank goodness. Water will get to us without power, but treating that water takes power. And we're talking about testing the water to make sure it's safe to drink. If they have to add anything, that takes power. Water will run for a while, but eventually the city's going to say, you need to stop drinking the water. We can't guarantee it's safe to drink. You need to boil it. And now we don't have drinking water that's safe to drink and we don't have power. So heating that water is really tough. So we just need to be thinking about how might we do this? It's great that water's running, but it's not going to stay clean for forever. My suggestion is, as always, either buy bottled water or fill your own containers with tap water and swap that out every 6 months. Bottled water, man, you just cannot go wrong. Let's talk about sewage. What happens to our sewer system if power were to go down hard? So, unfortunately, treating wastewater takes power. This is not a system that works with gravity. There are points in this system that take electricity. Moving wastewater around, getting it from one area to another to treat it, that takes electricity, that takes power. This is a strange one. This is the bigger system that I know nothing about as a normal citizen, but talking to Seattle Public Utilities, I learned stuff like this. They have to scrape the drains that collect trash from the storm drains and other spots. I don't know exactly what it is, but it takes power to scrape all of this debris out of the drainage system so the water can keep flowing. That takes power. And then again, if they're going to add anything, and I don't even know what they add, but if they need to add anything to the sewage to treat it, that takes power. So, what I'm trying to say here is the sewer system might run for a bit, but if the power in Seattle goes down hard, there's going to be a problem. Seattle Public Utilities has generators, gas powered generators that they can take from sewage treatment spot to sewage treatment spot, but they won't be able to keep up with our wastewater. If the power outage lasts long enough, they're going to give us different guidance on how to treat sewage. We can't just keep using the system. It will overflow everywhere and then contaminate all kinds of bodies of water. Unfortunately, we need power to handle our sewage. I want to encourage you to attend or listen to class number 4 on January 29th. We're going to talk a lot about that. I'm also working with Seattle Public Utilities to do a kind of a deep dive into the sewage system just to understand more about it. I did one back in November, I think it was, again with Seattle Public Utilities, and that's where I learned a lot about the water system. So I will send that link out to folks too. It's an hour-long class. You can skip all the history of the water system if you want and just listen to the last, I think it's 6 minutes, and it'll give you some really good guidance on water. You'll understand how the larger water system works. Okay, we're going to move to light. If the power is down hard, we're without lights. Light is, it's many, many, many things. It is safety, it is comfort, and it is very humanizing. Again, it's another thing I've read when reading accounts of folks that have lived through disasters, that not having a light source is really distressing. I'm going to talk about some weird sources of light. And again, you've got a link to all of this stuff. This is a weird gift. I got it from a cousin of mine. She gave me a toilet light for Christmas a couple years ago. It hangs on the side of your toilet and it has a motion sensor. So as you walk into the bathroom, even if you don't turn the light on, this thing sees you coming and lights up the inside of your toilet bowl with this little light. And yes, you can do blue and green and pink, and it can change every 5 seconds, and they're very fancy. They are battery operated, but I tell you, I at first I laughed because I thought it was the goofiest gift ever. But being able to walk into the bathroom without having to turn a light on in the middle of the night and being able to find the toilet is fabulous. So I'm a big fan. I've given them out as gifts. Consider toilet lights in your home. The next thing is power outage lights. This is one type of power outage lights. These obviously plug into an outlet, theoretically a spare outlet you have. Where I encourage folks to put them is like hallways or basements or any light that if the power were to go out, you would have a hard time getting out of that room. And it could be every room in your house. If the power goes out, this socket, I'm sorry, these devices sense it and they go, oh, power's out. I'm going to turn on. So, like this one right here, you can see it's on. It's shining a light onto the wall. A, it tells you the power went out. B, it helps you navigate. And then you go to this light socket, pull this thing out of the wall, and then that's your flashlight. You can go to the window, find out if lights are out everywhere or is it just your house. You can navigate your way to your fuse box, whatever you need to do. So these are power outage lights. This is just one type. Here's another one. These are pretty fancy. I love them. This is a light bulb that has a battery in it. So you just screw this into a lamp somewhere. It is constantly charging. As soon as that lamp realizes there's no electricity running to it anymore, this light turns on. It senses there's no more electricity running. Luckily, I have a battery inside me and I'm going to turn on. So this is probably not a good light bulb for your bedroom. Because if there's a storm and power goes off in the middle of the night, I don't think you want this thing turning on and scaring you. Maybe it's out in the hallway, maybe it's out in the living room. I don't know. Put it wherever it makes sense for you. But this is just one of many lights that do this, where they have a built-in battery. They won't stay lit for forever, but they'll stay lit for a while. The last one I just want to mention is you can get power outage lights hardwired into your home. It turns on when it senses that the power has gone off. So those are power outage lights. The next thing I want to talk about is this is a Coleman lantern. I would definitely get one that is rechargeable, that's LED battery. I'm sorry, LED bulb. They just last for a really long time and they're not hot. So think about some kind of a lantern. This is a fancy new headlamp that's out there. If you don't have one, buy a really cool one. So instead of a beam of light, this is a LED band that gives you quite a bit of coverage. So you don't have to turn your head in order to shine the light right on what you're trying to see. It has a little better coverage than the older kind of headlamps. And then this is a camping light. And when I say light is humanizing, this is kind of what I'm always thinking about. This is an LED bulb, very low wattage. It hangs from whatever. Theoretically, it hangs from the top of your tent. That's kind of why it's called a camping light. It hangs, and then lots of cord, 8 feet of cord. Here's your off and on switch. And then this hooks into a battery bank. And we'll talk about those. So just think about what kind of light sources might you want to have around. And again, I've given you links to all this stuff. You can make your own choices. So think about portable battery banks. That's what these things are called. You may have one at home. I've had multiple ones over the years. Some are really, really tiny, some are bigger. This is what you would plug that. That's what this USB-C plugs into, is one of these battery banks. I didn't give you the model to buy because no matter what I tell you, somebody's going to have one they like better. What I did was I referred you to an article. I like the wire cutter. Whenever I'm getting ready to buy an electronic, I look up wire cutter. I really trust what they say, and they're constantly doing reviews. So I gave you the link to the review of portable battery banks. Read through that, buy whatever one matches your budget and makes sense for you. They're battery banks, pretty small. They're not going to run anything for very long. These are power stations. Now, this is not generating power. You're going to feed this from your home. It's basically it's battery. You're going to put a lot of power in here, and then it's available when you need it. And these will run larger devices than just your cell phone or your laptop or your tablet. Power stations, think about them. Again, I sent you an article that will teach you about them, and it will give the recommendation based on somebody else's research, not mine. Power is a big concern. You might want to think about something like this. Portable solar battery charges. I don't have one to recommend. I just sent you to an article. Take their recommendation. Something I want you to think about. If you're lucky enough to have a car, a gas powered engine, you have a very valuable power source in your vehicle. If you have a car battery and this device, which I've given you a link to, alligator clips go onto your battery of your car. There's a fuse here, and then the end of this is a cigarette lighter. So you're going to need a cigarette lighter adapter. It's a little hard to see. This is a complicated one, but basically this is USB ports. You can charge things directly off your battery. I am going to get to my car, wherever it may be. I'm going to take the battery out of it very carefully. Don't tip the battery over when you're carrying it into your home. I'm going to power things in my home. Hopefully I can stay in my home, because I could sit in my car and I could turn the key and I could power up the whole car, and I could plug in my phone into my cigarette lighter in my car. I could do that, but that is sending electricity to lots of places in your car that aren't necessary. And I'm tied to my car. I have to sit in my car while my phone charges. With this contraption, with this little device and this little one, I can sit in my home and I can power my car. I can power my phone or small devices. So I sent you an article that explains how you can power your phone 20 to 30 times and still have enough power in your car battery that you can start your car. I just think this is a valuable source of power. I have charged an older cell phone. I wasn't brave enough to use it on my current cell phone, but an old model cell phone. I used this device and it worked just fine. Something to think about is you want, and this is really tiny letters, but it's 12 gauge wire. You want at least a 12 gauge, if not 10 gauge of wire, because the lower the gauge, the more power it can handle through that wire. So don't go cheap, don't go 14 gauge, get a 12 or a 10 just to keep yourself safe. And I don't know if this contraption can charge much else. If I was desperate, I would use it on my iPad. I might even use it on my laptop, but I don't know that I would do any other sensitive electrical devices using this system. I just bought a device to jumpstart your car, and it also works as a battery bank. How fabulous is that? That's a twofer. Generators. This is a luxury. I don't expect many people to have this, but I'm going to mention it. There's portable generators, and then there's generators that are built in. So as soon as your home loses power, this thing kicks in and delivers some amount of power to your home. I think I sent you an article on a portable generator if you're interested in this. These are hundreds of dollars. This is not a cheap investment. A built in one is probably thousands. Let's talk about solar panels. Just because a building has solar panels on it does not mean it's going to have, it doesn't, it doesn't mean they're going to have electricity if the power grid goes down. So solar panels are great. They don't help much if the power's out unless you have a battery storage system. Medical devices. This is a tough one. Every place I look that says like FEMA and all the other organizations I look at, all they say is if you are dependent on a medical device, and this, I'll just say some of these, this is a oxygen concentrator. So you don't have to carry a tank of oxygen around with you. This device pulls oxygen out of the air, increases it in the air that's then fed to you. So you're just getting more oxygen. This is a suction machine. This is a CPAP machine, and this is a home infusion pump. If you're on any of those devices, the hopefully someone along the way said, "Hey, make sure you have a backup battery kind of system for this." We hope that people that are dependent on these devices have thought about it or know a neighbor that has a generator or something. In the emergency communication hub world, we're really trying to figure out how to help our neighbors that are dependent on these. We are starting to explore what electric vehicles can do for us in a disaster. You can drive the electric vehicle to someone's house that is going to die without power for their medically essential devices. That's an idea. So it could act as a mobile battery. In some cases, you can use your car to power your home. There's just lots of stuff going on with batteries because now we have electric cars. It's going to be very interesting what we can tap into if there's a disaster. And think about medical devices for folks in your community. And then just a little bit about while you're waiting for the power to come back on. I did seek guidance from several pretty good resources that said unplug your appliances. I'm not so sure we need that as much in an urban environment because we're pretty sophisticated, but it can't hurt. So I would say if the power is going to be out for a very long time and it's not a big deal, unplug your appliances. And the reason they suggest doing that is for power surges. I personally think the electric company is going to control for power surges, but I could be wrong. And then do not rely on candles if the power is out because of an earthquake. You don't want the candle on your kitchen table rocking and tipping over and setting something on fire. Your homework is on the bottom of the sheet that I sent out, and I will send it out again when I send the recording link out. Think about how you're going to cook. And your answer might be, I don't have anything. I don't plan on buying anything, but I'm going to get to know my neighbors and we're going to have barbecues. Absolutely buy bottled water or fill your own containers. Think about how to make your home safer with toilet lights, power outage lights. Think about how you might provide light to your home and power small devices. And again, I gave you some links. And then if you depend on medical devices, think it through. What could you do? And then if you have any neighbors around you and there is a power outage, please check on them. Find out how they're doing. See if you can't help them. It really builds a lot of goodwill, and it's just what we need to do as human beings. Next week, we're going to talk about drinking water. There's updated guidance. I would listen to next week's class. There is better guidance. It's just a little bit more nuanced and a little bit more sophisticated than what I've been telling people because I learned stuff talking to the guy at Seattle Public Utilities. Really interesting stuff. We'll talk about that and as well as all things water next week. There's my email tips for kinds of food for long-term power outage. Man, that's so individual. Food that you're going to eat in a disaster, after a disaster, really depends on you. Don't buy food you won't eat. The last thing you need to do is make yourself choke down food you don't like. So figure out what foods have a really long shelf life and just buy extra. Peanut butter's good, tuna's good, canned foods, canned fruits, canned vegetables. You can even get like canned stews, that kind of stuff. Buy the food you like, buy extra. A lot of people stock up on beans. That's a tough one to cook in a disaster. I would not, it's nice that they're so lightweight, but you got to get water and you got to get power. If beans are a good staple food for you, then buy canned. All you have to do is heat them up, and you could even eat them cold if you had to.